Well, we're nearing the end of our Bless series. We're in week 6, where the focus is on the second S of Bless, which is story, or sharing your story. And we just heard that story from Ahmed, a story that was shown on Sunday morning, of how his wife's story really did have a big impact on his own journey to faith, both through hearing her story, but also through seeing it lived out before his eyes, and particularly seeing how Jesus helped her through some tough times. It's great to be joined for this discussion by our youth department. So we've got Andy Lamb, who joined the team back in March, I think it was,
that's correct.
as youth pastor, and Nicola Wade, who spends half her time as part of the youth team and then the other half overseeing our student work and our young adults work. So thank you both for coming and for taking part. So we're thinking about stories and how stories are powerful. Humans, we love stories. So let me just start by asking, what's your favourite story? You know, it might be a childhood thing or a current story. What's your favourite story, and what is it about the story that particularly captures you? Do you want to start, Nicola?
I hate favourite things because I never have one. But so recently, I'm really behind the times, and I've just finished Harry Potter series for the first time, and it was so good. I loved it. It kind of just got me in, and just entering into someone else's world and seeing how life is from their point of view.
Yeah.
And just all the action that you never really. We don't have magic and stuff like that, so I don't get that. But like, you get that in that story.
Yeah. Thanks for the controversial start.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's not controversial for me, but what is it about Harry Potter though? What the thread of the story? What is it that captures you? Is it the good against evil? Is it the kind of the downtrodden character who rises to be the hero, or what do you think it is?
Like the good against evil is good, obviously, but I think it's actually just seeing how other people function in a story, like in their life, how they live and how they. Like, you get to see someone else's world from someone else's point of view, where you would never get that if I just lived in my own story.
Yeah.
And see people do things that I would never personally do because I don't have that courage, or I'm just not that way inclined, or whatever. Okay. It's kind of, it's inspiring, even though it might not force me to do anything.
Yeah. Okay. Andy, what do you think?
My favourite is definitely from the film Dead Poets Society, which had Robin Williams in it. So Robin Williams is obviously the rogue teacher. He goes in, he introduces a new way of teaching, and it's very unorthodox for the environment that he's teaching in. Unfortunately, it does mean he gets sacked at the end. But what I take from it is at the end, when he leaves the classroom, all the pupils stand up on the desks. And there's a unity there, and there's a standing together, and I love that. It's a really emotional and powerful moment, and it's something that just every time I watch it just gets me every time. I just love that solidarity.
Yeah, I love Lord of the Rings. A bit like you, Nicola. When I'm asked a question, what's my favourite something, I struggle because but I love Lord of the Rings, and it's that whole thing of the underdog, the very ordinary person rising to be the hero and saving the world, and it's good against evil and that kind of thing. And I think that's a big reason why stories are so powerful, because actually we're all part of a big story ourselves. And I think deep down, every human, no matter what your worldview with faith or other things might be, I think every human knows we're part of a big story. And that's why stories appeal to us and shape us so much. So the story of the big story of the Bible, creation, and then the fall, and then redemption, and then a great ending, and good against evil, and the heroes. And you look through the Bible of who God uses. He uses ordinary people, really ordinary people, who might be the most unlikely heroes. And so I think being caught up in that story is what captures our imagination about stories we see ourselves. So coming kind of down to our level, those stories are big epic stories. They're kind of these heroic threads. But we come to our stories, and sometimes we can think our stories are really a bit dull or a bit ordinary. But actually, we sang several times on this Bless series that our stories are the most powerful evangelistic tool we have. So why do you think that is? Why do you think people's stories are so powerful, even if they might not be very, very dramatic? What do you think?
Well, I honestly, I think we're all prone at times to thinking that because our story doesn't have this huge moment in it and something that happens that's dramatic, that it almost disqualifies itself from being told. But what I found is it's only really when you start sharing your story with other people that, although it's a different time, there's different people in it, it's a different event, it might be completely different, but actually the raw feelings and emotions in it are very similar. You know, where people have experienced, you know, deep hurt and pain and loneliness, that your story might not be identical, but people pick up the traits and the feelings that run through it. So for me, it's powerful, because to be linked to another human being and understand that there's somebody else who feels like this and is going through this makes it one of the most powerful things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Nicola? Why are our stories so powerful?
It's that thing of, it's that connection and that making something human.
Yeah.
So sometimes we talk about things and it's facts and figures, and then someone tells their story and it's suddenly a human thing. There's human emotions involved, and I think that's really good. You can connect with it. It's that thing like, oh, I see that in myself, or I've gone through something like that, and you did it in a completely different way to me. Or, and so there's human aspect of it, and that is what you've gone through. You can't, in one sense, you can't argue with someone when they've said their story. You can't say, oh, well, you were wrong about that, because you're just tearing apart that person. And actually that they would have gone through that. And so I think it's just that human aspect of people that we connect with, because there's that, oh, you went through that emotion, I went through that as well.
Yeah, I think identification is really powerful. When you can, I mean, it's the same. Again, we've mentioned films and stories we love, and some epic films, but there's something about when you watch a film that it starts by saying this is a true story, and you think, oh wow, and even more you get captured by it, because you're always trying to identify what would that be like for the person. You know, you can watch a fiction and think, well, it's not real, but what would this be like for that person going through that? You know, watch something like Schindler's List or those kind of things, and you think, you start to try to identify, and I think that is something you're absolutely right, that it's so powerful about when we share our stories, because it's ours, it's real, that it's who we are, and nobody can deny it, and people can identify with it. So our stories don't have to be dramatic to be very, very powerful. So when have you had the opportunity to share your story, and when that's happened, is it a kind of I've got 5 minutes to give my before, during and after kind of story? It's helpful to know that shape story, or is it more a case of, I got 30 seconds to get something in here, and how do you make that choice? What do you think, Andy?
So I'm quite lucky, because I often get asked, tell me a bit about yourself, or even what's your story is normally how it's phrased. And I mean, what an open door opportunity that is. If you find that you don't get those opportunities and you're in a conversation with somebody, just because of politeness in this country, if you say to somebody, tell me a bit about yourself, they will inevitably then ask you, which opens that door. But because my story personally is intertwined with a lot of PG rated material and some definite after the watershed material, I tailor it to who I'm talking to. So if I'm talking to somebody and I know they've had very similar life experiences or are going through something that I've been through, specifically, I'll give them what I call both barrels, because I don't know whether or not I'll see them again. And it's that opportunity to say, your story's extreme, parts of mine are extreme, don't feel alone, there is an answer. If I'm speaking to younger people, or I look at somebody and think, actually, I'm going to get more opportunities, I'll tailor it to them, and I'll just give them a bit that won't overwhelm them in one session, if you will. So it really depends who I'm talking to. I think the Lord gives you a large element of wisdom of, you don't have to drop your entire autobiography on them in one hit.
Absolutely.
Mine's more, I don't think anyone's ever said, what's your story? I'm like, it's not a natural thing, and I don't think I've ever asked someone what's their story. But mine, I was thinking about it, and it's moments in my story that connect with the person or what's going on in my life. So when we were hiring the new youth pastor, I met up with uni friends who aren't Christians, and they were asking me about work and everything, and I got to share a snapshot of my story of what God was doing in that moment of kind of me being like, I'm not sure who's going to be the new youth pastor and everything, and God speaking to me in those moments.
Yeah.
And it was a really short conversation, but they were like, oh, so God speaks to you. And that opened up more. And I've had more of those opportunities where instead of saying, this is what was my life before, and now this is my life after, it was, actually, this is what's happening in my story right now.
Absolutely.
Or this connects with your story because I went through this however long ago kind of thing. So it's short little things.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, sometimes we find it very easy to not tell our story with the opportunity, and sometimes there's a good reason for that, but also it can be out of a sense of fear or I don't fancy that right now or whatever. But when Glenn Scrivener came on our Leaders' Day in September, something he talked about was having sentences up your sleeve. So this is what I really love about Jesus. This is what I love about the church. This is how Jesus got me through this particular tough time. Those kind of things that you have in your mind, so that actually it very naturally slips into a conversation. So like you say, it's a snapshot of something that's happening now rather than... But sometimes you do get the opportunity to share, actually, well, this is what I was, this is what happened, and this is who I am now. So it's being ready for all those opportunities, to be ready to give a reason for the hope that you have, as it says in the Bible. Well, there's lots more we could say, but thank you both for taking part in this discussion. Something I often hear people say is, I don't really have much of a story. And that might be you. You might think you don't really have much of a story. But, you know, when we have baptism meetings, what is really noticeable is that even the simplest story creates a really powerful moment in that meeting. So your story is powerful. Please don't discount your story. All stories are powerful because they're real and they're about you. So think about your story. Reflect on what God has done in your life. Let that fill you, and actually sometimes reflect on the contrast of what would life be like without God. Because it's all part of your story. But as Nicola was just saying there, the most powerful thing is when you can show that this is a story that's still being written, that God is still active in your life today, that you're still utterly dependent on him today, and that you're living an adventure of faith in your life right now, when life is good, but also when life isn't so good. That is a powerful witness to Jesus. So how is God shaping your story now? Keep using your story to witness to people about Jesus.